The Subcommittee on Energy and Mineral Resources will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today to hear testimony on Arctic resources and American competitiveness. Under Committee Rule 4F, any oral opening statements at hearings are limited to the chairman and the ranking member and the vice chairman and a designee of the ranking member. This will allow us to hear from our witnesses sooner and help members keep to their schedules. Therefore, I ask unanimous consent that all other members' opening statements be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted to the subcommittee clerk by 5 p.m. today. Hearing no objections, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Young, be allowed to sit on the dais and participate in today's hearing when he's able to attend. Hearing no objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for my opening statement. So often in Washington, we debate the idea of disconnect. We frequently hear of the disconnect between inside the Beltway bureaucrats versus outside the Beltway families who are just trying to pay their bills and ensure their children have a promising future. In Alaska, the idea of disconnect has an entirely different meaning. The big disconnect to Alaskans is the one they see between themselves and the lower 48. And why shouldn't they? Purchased from Russia in 1867 for the grand sum of $7.2 million, this is the state where the sun shines at 10 p.m. during the summer and barely shows its face in the deep winter months. This is the state where the opening of the Russian River for sockeye salmon makes the front page of the sports section over the NBA Finals. This is the state where not having cell phone reception is normal, where being late to work due to wildlife is okay. And if there is a constitutional crisis, you can still talk to the folks who wrote the state constitution. This administration is absolutely right when they say that Alaska is a unique environment with unique challenges. That is true. But they are dead wrong when they say oil and gas production should not occur for fear of harming this quote-unquote fragile environment. In fact, the state of Alaska has been producing crude oil safely for decades, reaching over 2 million barrels per day in 1988. Today, it is just a fraction of that rate at 500,000 barrels per day and declining. You can see a chart on the screen. The only thing fragile up there are the delicate beings who underestimate Alaska's rugged vastness. This decline is not for lack of resources. As you can see in the chart displayed, Alaska is rich in crude oil resources, far surpassing that of the Bakken or Eagle Ford shale. The reason for this decline is because the federal government owns nearly 70% of Alaska's land and most of its offshore acreage and has done little to open these areas to responsible oil and gas development. The decline in this American crude production not only is bad for our national security, but it hurts the state of Alaska and it hurts the local communities, including Alaska natives who support this development. It also severely impacts the future of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System, which is operating at a fraction of its capability. We will hear this message from our witnesses today. While the situation looks dire, there is hope, and that is from our nation's offshore Arctic resources. According to the Energy Information Administration, over half of Alaska's unproved resources are in our nation's Arctic outer continental shelf. Many experts believe these resources to be vast, which explains why many companies have invested billions and billions of dollars into exploration and development in this region. And the proximity of these resources to the existing infrastructure located on the north slope of Alaska, as well as the shallow water and low temperature environment, makes them all the more attractive. Getting back to my earlier theme of disconnects, there seems to be a disconnect within this administration when it comes to the development of these important resources, which even President Obama recently stated that he supported. On one hand, we have a study concluded by the National Petroleum Council, or NPC, requested by the Department of Energy, I might add, with extensive research and study into Arctic offshore energy development. On the other hand, we have an Arctic rule published by the Department of the Interior, largely prescriptive in nature, that could significantly slow exploration and development and possibly curtail industry interest in future offshore lease sales that are currently scheduled. The rule, which was published just weeks before the final release of the NPC study, does not take into account many of the well-thought-out conclusions of the study. The most striking being that most of the U.S. Arctic offshore oil and gas potential could be developed today using existing field-proven technology. Perhaps it's too much to ask that one government agency speak to another before drafting such a significant and expensive rulemaking that could impact the well-being of so many. But I hope to further explore that topic today. And lastly, we have seen a disconnect between those who believe that a balance can be achieved between oil and gas development and environmental protection, and those who simply would prefer to just say no, sometimes while floating atop their polyethylene kayaks. I know Director Salerno and I can agree that a balance can be achieved, allowing oil and gas development in the Arctic while protecting the environment. I hope that the Arctic Rule will allow for technological advances to achieve those results without antiquated, prescriptive regulations that strap the country to yesterday's technology. Alaska needs the development, America needs the development, the federal government needs to make it happen, and I look forward to hearing from the witnesses. I now recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent